Okay, so we were talking about how engineering majors are offered a whole wide variety of options. Would you like to continue with that?
Yeah, so with that having been said, my aim after my undergraduate career is to either go into law school or business school. Just so that talking about this whole kind of wide range of education, I think that while it is important to have a math and science background, it's also important to kind of prove yourself that you do have those other skills that allow you to be successful in the business world or in the law world. Now, I'm not really sure which direction I'm going to head in, but I know that while I am very technically minded and math and science oriented, that's not exactly my interest. And so I think that in this one specific case, that can kind of apply for other people as well. I can almost positively say that I'm not the only one who thinks that way. So with that being said, I think that there should be a distinction made that just because you are interested in math and science doesn't mean that the job that you have to take must be math and science oriented. For instance, you can be an engineer and become a contractor. That's like a very common practice for engineers.
The fact that we have those options and a plethora of combinations and things like that is what makes this country so great, is that we have the options. And if we take advantage of those options and use them the way they should be used, then we can compete and do better and really utilize what's given to us.
Yeah, I guess I agree with that. I mean, I think focus should be put on math and science for its own reasons, like competitiveness and everything. But there's also other, law should have focus, and health, mental health, those are things that really hit home with America. So
Now, do you guys think if so many more people are becoming engineering majors that these opportunities will dry up and there will be less of them?
That's a good question.
Yeah, it is a good question.
I don't know how many people choose to go that route. Now that there are so many more options, people are going towards different options.
I will tell you one thing. Engineering, I think engineering sort of gets a bad rep, and it's sort of like a common misconception that everyone becomes an engineer, because there are a lot of people that are in engineering-related majors. But I can tell you right now that a lot of people that go into engineering don't leave engineers. They don't leave in the major. A lot of people go into an engineering field just to be like, okay, well, I'll start with this, and then they figure out it's not for them and they go elsewhere. So I don't necessarily think it shuts off opportunities. I think it's good that people enter something and they're like, oh, well, this isn't for me, so I'm going to try something else. So I don't think it's necessarily limiting.
I'm also thinking, if you're giving all these scholarships and, loans to engineering majors, how many students are going to major in engineering and just be completely miserable, just for the money purposes? And then you'll need more people in the mental health field and such. Sad people.
I mean, if there's no motivation,
That's a good point, because I know a lot of people go to certain schools and I've even met people who have taken on certain majors just for scholarship money.
Yeah.
Just because college is so expensive.
Yeah, I know a lot of because you get scholarships if you're a women in science, for example, and I know a lot of girls who went into science just because
Why would
people
you pass
take a
up the
special
money, right?
interest in them. Yeah.
I think that's a better way of doing it.
the idea of being,
I'm only going to give you this.
corny as it sounds, passionate about something and doing something that you like, is also going to help us, I guess, build morale for the country. And if we're excited about what we're doing, then we'll be able to also compete globally and things like that. So
Yeah, people that are interested in what they're doing by far do a better job than people that aren't. So I mean, the more people you have doing it for the love of their job or for the sake of the company or whatever are going to do a much better job and be much more beneficial than people who just went into it just because, oh, well, they gave me money. I'm going to take this job just because, you know, it pays well.
So how would you suggest that they take the emphasis on math and science but still keep the passion?
Start young. Like if like I mean if we teach it early on and teach it well and don't let kids just like slide through their math classes, because I know that's what happened to me too. I wasn't good at math, so teachers just kind of like let me slide, and I hated it even more. So if you teach it well and start when you're young, then you're gonna develop an interest in it and become more excited about it.
At least, at the very least, you won't hate it.
Yeah.
Because a bad teacher can ruin any subject. There's not a single subject that a bad teacher cannot ruin. Even if you're interested in it, like a bad teacher can definitely decrease your opinion on it. So I think that's a good point. Teaching it young and doing it well would definitely be an overall benefit.
And not only teaching it, but teaching its importance. Because when you're a kid, like you don't, like you count with your fingers, you don't know how it like you don't know how it applies to the world. But I mean, I think if as a kid you knew how important math and science would be in your future, like in the world already, you would take a little bit more of an interest in it.
I think something else that we should try to focus on, while it is pretty hard because there are huge contrasts between different subjects like humanities and sciences. I think that something that we should at least try to start is the integration of different courses, whether it be like a math-based humanities class. I don't know how that would work really, but I'm sure it can be done somehow. Or for instance, like if you had an art class and you integrated geometry, that's a start, because typically art majors aren't the ones who are inclined to take mathematically oriented courses, but in that sense, you're not really forcing them to take the course, but you're rather suggesting or trying to spark a little bit of interest in that. So I think that a more subtle attitude of addressing the problem would be a little bit of a better start than kind of saying that everyone has to take math science courses.
I think to what he said, I would draw a parallel to like kids' TV shows.
Yeah.
Like, because they're supposed to be fun and whatnot, like Dora the Explorer, but she also like they throw in like counting, like
Spanish.
counting in Spanish and whatnot, and I mean those are life skills. I mean counting, you can try going anywhere without counting. Spanish maybe you may not use, but I mean you're gonna know a few things of Spanish. Like who does that hurt? Knowing a few words of Spanish, like from Dora.
The option also talks about focusing on foreign languages. What do you guys feel about that?
I think it's important.
I think that's important.
I mean, I'm pretty sure we were all taught Spanish in our elementary schools. No?
No,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
wasn't
no, I
taught
Yeah,
was.
just like they only
Just a
Spanish
little
or
bit.
French or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but
never
then
forced to go in.
and then there wasn't enough funds for it in my school personally, so they dropped it. So we stopped. We went from 3rd to 6th grade, but I think starting it maybe even younger and then making it mandatory throughout all your years would be really beneficial, because everyone needs another language.
I think so many countries like focus on speaking English that it's just like rude if we just disregard their language.
It's crazy how many other countries focus on teaching English. Like,
And
I
we just
know.
sit back like.
Yeah, I know in Japan, they learn English in like 3rd grade. Like they're taught like it's not even like an option. It's just part of their everyday classes, learning English. Like, yet we have so many people here who think learning other languages are kind of useless. And that just baffles me because, I mean, it's all one world. You're gonna have to communicate with other groups of people. Especially like in technology and math fields, like I would say the Asian countries are probably like are the leaders in technology right now, like South Korea, Japan, and whatnot. And they all learn English, but how many people do you know who know Korean or Japanese? How are we supposed to communicate with those people if we don't really learn their languages?
Mandarin is like the second most spoken language, and I can
Yeah.
guarantee you that maybe no one in America knows how to speak it.
It's also very difficult.
I know, but if it's the
There are
spoken
schools in California that start teaching Chinese at kindergarten. Are you suggesting they take that approach throughout the country?
I think maybe think about it. I mean, if we want to compete with the big countries, then we need to speak their language. It would help. I mean, I know it's like a big step, like teach Chinese or Mandarin at kindergarten. That's hard for a kid to do, but if we start young, it'll be easier as you go on.
My little sister attends a school in Italy that speaks only English. Do you think having schools taught in different languages would be beneficial to introduce into this country?
They're lenient. I mean, if I was in like a Chinese school, I would probably panic, but I'd give it a shot.
I think it could be beneficial, but I think you'd get a lot of pushback from parents.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't know how much skepticism there would be about sending your kid to an all other language school. Just because I'm sure parents are worried about, is my kid going to do well, or is my kid even going to use this language?
Or are they going to lose their like
Yeah, are they gonna,
values?
if they're gonna take on other people's cultures and morals, which really isn't a bad thing, but there are people who think that is a bad thing, that you learn other cultures and sort of integrate them. So it could be beneficial, but I think that would be really hard to get put into action.
Yeah, I didn't have the option to take like Mandarin or anything until college. Like,
Yeah.
it was between like French, German, and Spanish in high school, and that was it.
My high school offered French, German, Spanish, and then Latin and Japanese.
Oh yeah, we had Latin. So like anybody needs to know how to speak Latin.
See, I didn't even have those options because we lived in Florida, so it's like you take Spanish.
Right. Yeah.
It's like proven
It's pretty
that
much like
it's proven that when you learn young, you're better able to learn it. And so when you're offered these classes in college, there's not much motivation, and it's much harder to learn.
So are you guys saying don't focus on the foreign language as much in college, but start it young, and then in college focus on math and science?
I would be okay with that, and I think that would work a little better just because if you think about it, starting young is definitely going to be a lot easier than doing it in college, just because in college people are teenagers and 20-year-olds who think they know everything, don't want to budge from their ideals. They're much harder to get to accept other people's ideals and whatnot than kindergartners, for instance. So that would definitely be a lot easier.
Yeah, I think starting young and then even taking a language like through college, maybe not putting a ton of focus on it, but like just getting the background at least.
I know some majors have a required foreign language credit, like you have to take 12 credits of foreign language. Do you think that they should branch that out into all majors?
I think that one of the glaring errors in like the math and science curriculums is that there's, well, at least at Penn State, there's no language requirement for that. But I mean, speaking from my perspective, I took 3 years of French and 1 year of Spanish in elementary school, and then 3 years of French and Latin in middle school, and then 3 years of French and 1 year of Latin in high school. And I was a spectacular French student, but I hated the language. And I just hated learning in a different language. And it came natural to me, but I didn't really like it. And so when I came to college, it was like a big plus that the engineering program didn't require any sort of like foreign language. But with that being said, I think that I'm kind of losing that other sphere of my mind that kind of comes with French, whether it be that kind of other side of understanding that makes you translate your thoughts into a different language. I think that's pretty useful, as well as accepting different values from other cultures, which as you get into higher language levels, you stop learning the language and start learning the culture a little bit more, because that's ultimately what's important, is learning the language. And so I think that while it wouldn't really be to my satisfaction, I think that's kind of necessary to integrate that language aspect of the curriculum back into the math and science realms of education.
Yeah, I think at our level, like knowing a language kind of gives you an edge over your competition. Like when you go into the job market, like if you're bilingual, like more people are going to want to hire you. But I don't think everybody should be bilingual. But I mean, I think everyone should have somewhat of a background in a foreign language.
Good basis.
Yeah.
So you can communicate with others. And I think, I mean, the Winter Olympics are obviously right now, and we see this that when American interviewers are interviewing people from other countries, they know they can communicate, and then the Americans, communicate in other languages. Not all of them, but like, I just think that's.
Yeah, they're always doing interviews in English and not in like their
their
native
native
tongue.
tongue, so they know, and we don't. So,
I think the whole integration of language like early in life, it seems like pretty aggressive to some people, like teaching foreign language like the first grader. But I think that ultimately it's not really like the language that's going to be useful. It's kind of the breadth of ability to understand which is ultimately what we're trying to teach in everyone. The ability to understand new concepts and different concepts that normally wouldn't really be applicable in American education, if that makes sense. And I think that that's sort of necessary for us to stay, going back to the whole keeping competitive with the rest of the world. I think that that's sort of necessary when we realize that everyone else is learning English. While we could sit back and say, if everyone else is learning another language, we don't have to do anything because it's the only language we're going to need. I think that's obviously a very ignorant attitude, and that kind of attitude isn't going to get us anywhere. For example, my uncle travels a lot for his work, and so he's always in Japan, and he comes back. Obviously, he can speak their language, and he says that their form of communication it's much different than ours to an extent that he can't really explain it to me. He says that you really have to go to Japan and experience how they communicate with each other, how they talk, how they run their businesses, in order to understand why it's necessary for us to learn that other side of business and education.
I mean, it's not necessarily that everyone else is learning English, it's just that everyone else is learning another language, because when we lived in England, my little sister started taking French in kindergarten. And I know earlier you were talking about how we needed to be more personable. Do you think that learning another language, as well as focusing on the math and science, will learning the other language help people become more personable?
Absolutely, because like one aspect to being personable is being relatable, and obviously learning another language, learning another culture of, say, one of the business associates is very obvious. It's a very obvious advantage in conducting that business, because if you weren't as familiar with their culture, with their ways of doing things, which would come with learning their language, then it would be anywhere from slightly to exponentially harder to conduct that business.
And I would say that if you were to learn another language, that would mean that you sort of dabbled in the culture and whatnot. And if you dabble in culture, that pushes you away from being closed-minded, which is a big problem with being personable. Like, try being personable with someone that is closed-minded, who is unwilling to accept ideas of others. You're not really going to want to talk to someone like that. So someone who has learned other cultures and whatnot would definitely be more accepting to other people's ideas and thoughts and whatnot. That would make you more personable.
Yeah, I mean, you see like American political figures go to other countries and literally offend them because they don't know their culture, and like they'll do something that's offensive in that country. And I think even things like that, like as basic as that, should be taught. Like what not to do if you're visiting another country. And I feel like if you see someone up there, like, or in a meeting, or who's supposed to represent, like a political figure, and they have like a translator next to them, I feel like that does make them look less personable. Like, at least try and learn a little bit so you can communicate without somebody translating.
Yeah.
Ways to the whole idea of being just well-rounded is kind of, it's really important, but not necessarily emphasized.
In the same way that math challenges us to think in a different way, that's what my.
So how would you guys go about implementing this throughout school?
Even like the simple aspect of
Yeah, I'm a big,
which is included in the class.
I just think focusing more on these things in high school early on is really important. And
Structures of diagrams
maybe
which are meant to
even the way we're hiring teachers or whatnot, we need good teachers that teach things the right way and make sure their kids and their students are learning it. So maybe even think about the way we test kids and the way we teach, because we're giving standardized tests and they're multiple choice and that's fine or whatever, but I don't really think it's helping us gauge the way our students are learning. It's helping us gauge the way smart kids can take a test or smart kids who can't take a test. But that's a whole nother realm.
That's something huge, is that in high school you worry so much about these standardized tests because getting into good colleges and whatnot, they emphasize so much that you need good test scores to get into these colleges and whatnot. And even getting good grades. Like there are a lot of kids in high schools who cheat their way through high school because they need the good grades to be able to get into the good college, which is now expected. And we've moved from learning to get an education to learn about things. Now we're just going to high school to get the good grades to get into college. And are you really learning? And that's where that gray area comes in. Are students going there to learn, or are they just going there to, fake their way through it and get into college?
It's kind of like the teach a man to fish, feed him for a lifetime, or give him a fish, feed him for a day. We need to make sure our kids are learning and know the value of learning rather than the value of doing this.
I definitely think though, like teaching a foreign language to like elementary school kids is a good idea. Like starting them that young, I think is smart.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Because all little kids I know who watch Dora, like they get into it, like they want to know.
Or like me, how?
Yeah.
So how would you guys reform the colleges to reflect your opinions on the math, sciences, and foreign languages?
Foreign language requirements for all majors, I think so. Like at least a couple classes.
Yeah, a semester, maybe a semester or two. Could I don't think that could really hurt anyone.
Nothing's gonna hurt us.
Yeah, nothing's really gonna hurt people. It's just gonna be people complaining. People are gonna complain no matter what you do, and that's something very important. Is that you have to realize that no matter what choice you make, no matter how universally good it is for everyone, always going to be people who are going to complain about it. So that's where you have to take a step and say, well, this is better for everyone, so we're just going to go with it. We're not going to care about whatever pushback is, because you'll never get anything done if you worry about doesn't like it.
I guess we're done because it's like 10:59. Oh, it's 11 o'clock. Good job, guys.